A huge challenge for research and for innovation is translation. How does work that starts in a lab or that exists as part of a very large funded project with a lot of resources behind it, how does that translate into something that can make a difference in the real world? And that can be true when you're talking about the development of a new medical treatment or when you're talking about the development of a new pedagogical approach, a new way of teaching and learning. Um, when you're dealing in social science domains like education, especially, those translations are very difficult. And what we find more often than not is that a lot of the things that we build in one context aren't that useful in another context. There's actually a big conversation today about how technology is going to change education or change learning, and everybody always talks about, here's the app that will fix education. But in fact, none of those will make a difference because education, the way we teach, is a very durable property, and what we need to do is work with people on problems they care about, problems they believe in, and help them understand what trajectory they're on and how to shape that trajectory. My field, learning sciences, has put a lot of energy into developing a kind of research, an approach we call design-based research. This is the idea that the process of design itself is a valid context for doing research. And when we think about a learning environment, which is the kind of design that a lot of my colleagues and I think about, we want to try to work in as realistic, as true to the world setting as possible in order to understand how those designs are working in the real world. And we often have what a colleague of mine calls a small t theory. And a small t theory might be something like the ability to predict your grade in this class will create more freedom for you to experiment and take more risks. That's a small t theory about design. I can look and see whether that's happening. And if it turns out it's not happening, I can either tweak my theory or I can tweak my design, sometimes both. So it's less a process, design-based research is less a process of trying to isolate variables or hold any one thing constant, and more a process of trying to think about how everything's working together to try to make the noise and the environment meaningful, because you understand that the environments that things will eventually be used in are noisy and have a lot of things that you may not have been thinking about when you made your initial design. We add to that this notion of design-based implementation research, which a colleague of mine and I have been working on for the last 3 or 4 years and is starting to now catch on as a way of thinking, which is that when you begin thinking about design from the very beginning, you should think about designing for scalability and sustainability. Because a lot of times what we do is use our classroom-based or context-based design-based research to learn important things about learning and teaching. But we aren't really thinking what will happen when the project ends. And often what happens when the project ends is either people go back to doing what they were doing before, or they go on and try some new thing out, because we often work with very innovative educators. Design-based implementation research really has to begin with this process of getting the players together, the people who care about the outcome of this work, and trying to help them negotiate what the problems are they're trying to work on, what the things are they care about right now. I've often believed that the keys to fostering change among my colleagues are to A, show them that I can do something they care about. And when I talk about, for instance, getting students to work harder and like it more, well, people like that idea. I'd like my students to be more engaged and work harder. And then when I say, but now I can show you a way to do that at a reduced cost to you in terms of time, effort, management, now I've got their attention. Because you might believe something is worth doing, but think it's too hard to accomplish, or that won't work in my context because A, B, and C. Design-based implementation research is meant to try and address some of those concerns from the very beginning so that I'm not partnering with you in research. You're not doing me a favor by letting me work in your classroom, but rather you believe that we're working together on something that you care about and I care about. So when we're done, if we've been successful together, you want to keep using that innovation, you want to keep using that intervention. And I've learned something about the process of working with that intervention that I can then take into my next iteration, my next generation of design. So it's important that this work not just produce things of practical value, but that it also contribute theory back to the process so that we can continue to make progress and innovate towards whatever our eventual goals are. So for me, design-based research is a way forward, is a way to take research in a very practical sense from the laboratory to the real world and create things of meaning and value that will live in the real world and inform the work that we have to do as academics building better futures.